So, this training is all about crafting a church social media policy. If you do not have a policy for your church social media ministry, definitely want to come up with one. This will save you a lot of time and energy later. I know putting together a policy can sometimes be a pain, but it's always great to have them. When questions come up, when problems come up, you can just refer back to the policy. So, I'm going to outline some things that you should be thinking about when considering your church social media policy. And also, there will be a PDF that you can look at, an overview to help guide you as you put together your policy. First of all, do not create War and Peace here. Do not make it super long. I would say 2-3 pages tops. I would keep it to two. If you can keep it to one, bonus points, bullet points. You want it to be easy to understand because you want people to read it and know it and abide by it. If it is too long and it gets too churchy language or too big word language, people are not going to read it. And if people don't read it, they cannot abide by it. Make it concise, make it easy to understand. And the first thing you want to do before you start is talk about what is our why. What is your why of social media ministry? Why is your church doing social media ministry? And that should inform everything you do from there on out. Now, I strongly encourage you not to start this in committee from scratch. I would encourage one or two of you to come up with a statement of what you believe is the why of your church's social media ministry, preferably those of you who are already actively involved in social media ministry, and present it to whoever needs to approve that statement. Yeah, do not start this from scratch in committee. It will suck the life and the time right out of you. So come up with a statement. Here's one that I like to use. This may be your why, it may not be. Come up with your why, get that statement approved, and start with your why. I strongly encourage you to establish a social media team. Have 2 or 3 people, especially for small churches, 2 or 3 people who are given the authority to create and schedule and manage the content. You do not want your social media to be micromanaged by a committee or a board. You want that to be under the purview of a couple of people who are abiding by the social media policy that you have created, but then you give them the freedom to run with it under the care of the social media policy that you have established. And just a quick note, if all of your social media platforms are not registered under your church email, do that today. Get that done. It's not so much a problem anymore, but when churches first started using social media, and you may have a leftover platform from that time, there's probably a church member who knew about social media and was good at it. And so they started up the church's page and it was launched under their email address, but then they move or die or leave the church or whatever, and you don't have control over your platform anymore. So make sure all of your platforms are under a church email that is not going to change. Usually your admin email is the best one to do that with. And then you do want an approval process, not for post to post to post, but if you want to add platforms for that same reason. Sometimes people in your church will get all excited and decide the church needs a TikTok channel and they'll just start one up. So just make sure there is a formal process and establish who is going to approve that. It could be your social media team, it could be whatever committee social media ministry falls under at your church. But just make sure there's an approval process for any time you decide to add a new platform to your church's ministry so that you don't have some rogue agents out there starting up all sorts of stuff. You do want to have a leadership covenant. People have their own personal social media platforms, and you don't have any control over what they do or don't post there. However, anybody who is in leadership in the church, whether it is paid or volunteer, should sign a covenant and agree to not air the dirty laundry of the church on any social media platform, including their own. This is really important. You do not want people airing the church's issues out there in the social medias, in the interwebs. That is something that should be handled in person, and that's an important covenant to establish. So privacy protection, and I'll preface this, we're talking about adults here. We're going to talk about children in a moment. One of the best things you can do in your policy is you don't tag anyone in any of the church's posts. You can let people tag themselves, but you do not identify anyone through tagging in your social media platforms. You can get permissions from everybody. This is really difficult to do depending on the size of your church and also every visitor who comes in. One of the best things you can do is in your bulletin or in your projections, let people know Most of you are filming. Hey, this is being filmed. It's being broadcast over the YouTubes. And some of these image may be used in social media. If you would like for your image not to be used in social media ministry, email this person and let us know. That is an easy way to do it. Rather than trying to get permissions from everyone, give people the opportunity to opt out. In this day and age, the expectation that your image could show up at any time on social media, that is pretty common. We all know that people are photoing and videoing all the time. However, it is church, and we want people to feel like they can be safe and their privacy is protected. So if they want to opt out of that, we need to give them the option to do so. Be careful with prayer requests. You may want to establish some kind of policy with prayer requests. That can get pretty personal with people. You may not want prayer requests blasted out all over to the public. If you have a private Facebook page for your church rather than your public forums, that might be a good place to keep your prayer requests. And then you may want to think about other notices. Specifically, the most important one is probably when someone dies. It should be in your social media policy not to post anything without permission from the family. I know people are generally very careful about this. However, I have seen where there's somebody who's very important to the church, people are very close to them, and somebody kind of jumps the gun knowing that people are going to want to know, and the family is not asked first, and that can just create, some real ickiness. So make sure that's in your policy. Don't post anything about somebody dying until the family gives their permission. Okay, now youth and children. Now, these are people you can obtain permission from. I've talked with my colleagues who do youth ministry, and these two things are pretty common and very helpful. Every year, as the school year starts, youth directors, youth volunteers get parents and kids to fill out a form, and on that form is permission for their images to be used in social media. Sorry for any background noise. I am in New York City, and there's construction going on outside my apartment that I cannot control. Anyway, get people to opt in for that. And if they don't put their kids on social media. I once had a family of 4 in a church I served who did not want their children on social media, and we abided by that. It was pretty easy to do. And then when it comes to church and adult connections on social media, you are going to have adults in your church connect with youth on social media. The policy for that, particularly for your leadership, both volunteer and paid, should be the same as in person. Every communication and contact should be done in a public forum, meaning if they want to comment on something a youth is doing, that is in a public facing, a comment on a post, a comment on a video. They should not be using direct message or DMing them within any of those platforms unless it is a group message or a group text. So it's the open space, closed space rule. Never one adult with one child. There should always be 2 adults present. So I hope that makes sense. Treat your social media like you do your public spaces when it comes to adult and youth interaction. Okay, so now I've literally moved to a closet to try to mitigate the construction noise outside. Let's talk dealing with trolls. So everybody's going to get some trolls from time to time. Sometimes criticisms can just be addressed with one reply. Somebody has a problem with something and you actually have an answer. I mean, they're not really trolling. They seriously have an issue or a question and you can address it with one comment. And if you can't address it with one comment, take it offline. Give your social media team the authority to delete inappropriate contents and define what gets somebody blocked from your platforms. And do not be shy about deleting and blocking. I say this a lot. This is your church's platform for you to share the good news of the gospel and to share about the ministry of your church. Other people do not get to hijack that for their own purposes. So sometimes churches feel bad for not letting people have a voice. They don't get to have a voice on your church platform. They can have a voice on their platform. So do not feel bad and do not be shy about deleting or blocking inappropriate people and comments. And then whatever your community guidelines are, whatever you deem not appropriate, whatever you think is not okay, put that up, post it so that people can see, pin it to the top of your page so that when you do delete, block somebody, you can say, hey, this is violation of our community guidelines. They are clearly posted. And again, give your social media team the authority to manage that. So those are the things I think you need to consider. You may come up with some other things as well. Again, I urge you to keep it concise, to keep it easy to read, easy to digest, so that your people will actually read it and put it to use. So good luck crafting your church's social media ministry policy. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email and I will help in any way that I can.